confirmed in this short radio interview. So I'll go into it now.
Okay.
Okay, at the time that this radio interview took place, Katelyn has been missing for 6 days. So the elevation of concern is going to be stronger. And what I'm listening for is to be guided by his words. I cannot analyze this interview outside the influence of the 911 call. What I'd like to do is have the interview nullify the analysis of the call. That's what I'm looking for. I do not expect him in this to disparage her. I do not expect him to say he's sorry. I do not expect any of those things that we saw in the 911 call. I'm going in again with the presupposition that he didn't do it and that he's concerned for her. However, I do have the weight of the prior analysis as I'm considering these things. So will this short radio interview affirm the status of guilty caller, or will it deny it? That's what I'm open to learn. Also, in interviewing, we ask open-ended questions. Tell us what happened, and then what happened. And for instance, when he introduced the topic of deception, I would have said, what do you mean by deception? What do you mean by deceiving? Allow him to explain that. The interviewers here, they don't have that training, and so they do make mistakes. They ask leading questions. They ask compound questions, which allows the person to pick and choose which they want to answer. He said some things that they should have followed up on, they didn't, but it is what it is. We work with that context. But consider this. She's now been missing for 6 days. His elevation of concern should be higher, which means her memory should be more precious than even it was 6 days ago to him. Because it's been 6 days now. It's very likely after 6 days an innocent caller has not slept. A lack of sleep would be there. But each night, even in trying to sleep, he's going to think about the wonderful memories between them and hope and believe that she's alive. Let's see what he says. Began by asking how he was doing, and he began with his pause, which means he needs time to think about that. Not too good, he said. Most of us would be devastated at this point, 6 days, but he's not too good. John, let me ask you, when was the last time you saw Katelyn? So the interviewer may have had a sense from the 911 call we all know the last moments that you're with someone are going to be critically important. The person is going to have a very high, strong, powerful memory due to the influx of cortisol and other hormones. But the interviewer, I wondered if he had got the sense that when he was first asked the location, he refused to answer it, whether that was in his mind when he asked this question. It's a good question, though. He said, I saw her at her house on Saturday night. Now, I believe that's true. I think he did see her at her house Saturday night. I don't think that's the truth answer about the last time he saw her or the last place he saw her. But he is affirming something that is true, and this is what people do with deception, will look to be technically true. I did not have sexual relations with that woman, Ms. Lewinsky. Now, technically, that was truthful, and had he been asked in a polygraph, did you have sexual relations with that woman, Miss Lewinsky? And he said no, he would have passed because in his personal, subjective, internal dictionary, sexual relations was intercourse. So we saw I did not have, and then he used the word with, that woman, that distancing Miss Lewinsky. The word I and the word Lewinsky couldn't be any further apart. That is strong distancing language. So I want you to keep that in mind as we go along with the theme of psychological distancing. It's technically true, but it's meant to deceive. So let me ask you, when was the last time you saw Katelyn? In fact, when he says, John, let me ask you, he uses his name, and let me ask you, as if asking permission in an interview. He knows he's in sensitive area here, the interviewer. Pause. I saw her at her house on Saturday night. Who did you see Saturday night? Again, he will not use Katelyn's name. That is not expected. That's not normal. The need to pause and think, that is a very sensitive time period for him. That's where I indicated him for deception, that period of time when he last was with her. The location and what happened is deceptively being withheld, my assertion. One of the interviewers says, last Saturday night, and you thought nothing of it? It's like, love you, see you later. What was the last communication you had with her? Did you speak with her on the phone? The interviewer does a very poor job with that. Compound questions should be avoided. He said, no, she had sent me a few text messages after I left her house. That is a signal of missing information. The word left or departing from a location is a signal of missing information. He doesn't want to say where he was or where he went to. The location of the arrival is not where he's focusing. It's the departure his words are showing. And so as we look for that, the word left is an indication of missing information. For example, a real clear way of understanding that is, I went to the lobby. It's very likely to be a true statement. We're at a hotel doing an interview. I went to the lobby. Or I could say, I left the interview room and went to the lobby. The leaving of the interview room is not necessary because I can't get to the lobby unless I leave the interview room. By giving you that additional information, I left the interview room, is an indication that my brain is not going forward chronologically. It stopped because there's something on my mind that took place in the interview room. So we flag that as unnecessary and something that people can readily understand. His departure from her, right here, says missing information to the analyst. She sent me a few text messages after I left her house. By the way, just so you know, the only thing he mentioned earlier, the only thing was that she had her cell phone. So he was able to take inventory of the entire house and knew the only thing that she took with her was her cell phone. As if he knows what's with her. This statement itself, in correlation to the 911 call, should cause police to consider, did he send text messages himself? Remember, he was asked, who did you call in her family? Her mother? He said, no, her father. And then he mentioned that the cell phone, unnecessarily taking the direction off of who he spoke to onto something brand new, introducing something brand new about deception, he mentioned, and then regarding, did you speak to mom, you speak to father? I spoke to the father. Instead of telling us what that was about, he introduces a cell phone. He elevated cell phone, very important, and now we know why. Now he's saying, she sent me text messages, and I believe that on his phone is text messages from her phone. And I don't know anything about the case. Did he send them to himself? Would be the question I would like to ask. And the interviewer then paused and said, which is interesting. That pause was actually pretty good because it allowed the awkward silence to provoke John into speaking. He said, just a few things about some things she wanted me to do for her. She was consistently busy, so I had to help her do a lot of things. He's telling us he's put out by the victim. He had to do these things for her. He is subtly complaining about her at a critical time where we expect nothing but the highest praise. We don't expect to hear any complaints about her. Listen to what he said. She sent me a few text messages after I left her house. He wants us to know that there's missing information there and the departure is very sensitive. The interviewer said, and John Carter then said, just a few things about some things she wanted me to do for her. She was consistently busy, so I had to help her do a lot of things. As if she was a burden to him. It is a subtle blaming of a victim which what happens in homicide cases very often is that the guilty party will find a way to justify what he had to do in his mind. In shaken baby cases, we'll hear someone say, the baby wouldn't stop crying, putting the emphasis upon the baby, not on the shaking of the baby, is a subtle way of trying to push away guilt. And so we were listening, we're hoping for him to talk about her, how wonderful she is. Instead, what a pain she was. I always had to do things for her. He's put off by her, or put out by her. And then the interviewer said, and all of a sudden you don't hear from her? When? At what point do you think maybe there's a problem? The interviewer should have avoided making assumptions, but, and then here John gave some statements that are very concerning. We have a saying in statement analysis. When someone says, I love you, or I love my children, or I kiss my kids goodnight, that sort of thing, it's indicative of a problem. Greetings, salutations, indicative of a problem. If you said, I love my daughter, I love you, good night, it's indicative of a problem. And you say, that's crazy. I always say, I love you to my daughter when I kiss her goodnight. We all do. We all don't feel a need to say that publicly, though. It's that need that highlights something is wrong. It's another problematic word in statement analysis is the word normal. When someone refers to themselves as normal, it generally indicates that they themselves or others have considered them not normal. A man was accused of sexually molesting a boy, and he says, I'm a normal man, instead of, I didn't molest the child. So the word normal, we also look at it this way. The word normal, in any usage, tells us that the situation was anything but normal. And even a first grader knows, once upon a time, it was a day like every other day. And all of a sudden the kids begin to sit up because they know something is coming that wasn't like every other day. So when we hear the word normal in any stance, when someone says it was a normal day like any other, pay attention because something not normal is coming. So I say good night, good morning to my children, good morning to my wife, but I don't have a need to tell that in a missing persons case, or to police, or in a radio interview. I don't need to convince anyone of that. Most people wouldn't even mention it. Well, after I went home, so now he's jumped over time. He left her house, and now it's after he went home. So that tells us between the time that he left her house and the time after he was home is a whole period of time he doesn't want to talk about. Wherever he was and whatever he was doing and where he went, he does not want to reveal. I sent her a good morning text message. Okay? That is right away flagged as a problematic in the relationship. And then I woke up the next day. So we have a jump now, 24 hours. After I went home, I sent her a good morning text message because I'm a really good guy. I looked everywhere for her. I couldn't find her everywhere. I don't break rules. I'm polite to police. I generally wouldn't call before 24 hours. I said good morning to my fiance. By the way, have you heard her name from his lips yet? And then I woke up the next day. He has now jumped another 24 hours. And normally she sends me a good morning text message, which now signals that what is to follow is anything but normal in his reality. But at, like, she sends me, present tense, something back saying thank you and all that stuff. But she didn't send anything. But that didn't entirely worry me. I just thought maybe she was busy or something. So he says what didn't happen didn't cause an emotion. So if I say to you, where were you when 9/11 happened? You would think back correlating where you were, what you were doing when something happened. If I said to you, where were you when you didn't win the lottery? What? What lottery? We don't mark time by things that don't happen. We mark time by things that do happen. Listen to what he says. He tells us what normally happens. And then he said, she didn't send anything, and that didn't entirely worry me. So he's marking his emotional time by things that didn't happen. Very strong indication of deception. I just thought maybe she was busy or something. Because, she works every day and he has to do stuff for her. What he said earlier. Or she just woke up late for work or something. But, and the word but refutes or minimizes that which preceded it. But then, there was just, she sent me, or then I sent her. When someone stutters on their pronouns, it's an indication of increase in anxiety. We call it the stuttering I. We have been using the pronoun I since we were very little. We have used the pronoun I millions of times. We're really good at it. When someone can't keep their pronouns straight, you're looking at deception. If the only lie detection training someone was to have was just pronouns alone, you'd be pretty good at it. He is confusing his pronouns because he is not speaking from experiential memory. He is speaking from script. In the scripted alibi, the experiences has to be a self-reference because it didn't exist experientially. He didn't experience these things. They're not real. That's why he's stuttering over them. That's why he's telling us what he didn't feel when something didn't happen. Now, people look at me sometimes with a confused look on their face, and I say, exactly. You're not getting it because it's not real. It feels awkward to you because it is awkward. It's not truth. She sent me, or then I sent her no response and all that stuff. Then I sent her a few more text messages, no response, and all that stuff. Okay? That's where he also drops a pronoun. By the way, that entire paragraph of an answer did not use the word Katelyn once. I'm going back and repeating it because it is important. And the interviewer said, so she didn't show up for work or a job and something was clearly going on, which doesn't even ask a question. He said, actually, I had a feeling something was going on when I saw her car in the parking lot and I went up to her room and her purse and keys were still there. So the interviewer said, wow. Another one said, wow. And so they said, John, what do you think happened? Do you suspect foul play? Okay. So now it's been 6 days. He's been with her for 6 years. He knows her really well. He doesn't use her name or describe anything about her. But what do you think happened? That's a good question. He said, I really don't know. Stuttering I. I really don't know. Not I don't know. Not even I don't know. I really don't know. Which tells us he has some knowledge of it. I've been asked this question a lot, and I just have no idea. Now, when someone says they have no idea about something like that, we want to find out if that's true, because most of us have ideas about just about everything in life. He has had 6 days to think about this. In fact, he blamed the festival earlier, which says he does have some idea. So is it truthful that you have no idea? He said, and I just have no idea. And then he stutters again on the pronoun I. I couldn't tell you. That means he has lost capability of saying so, and I believe that. I have the strongest thought that she would not run away. So he has no idea, but he has the strongest thought. That's a contradiction. That she would not run away. His strongest thought is she would not run away from him. I mean, there's no reason for her to go anywhere. But other than that, I have no idea what could have possibly happened to her. Not what happened to her, what could have possibly happened to her. He is literally weakening his own denial. He's weakening it himself. What he's saying to us, and actually at this point he's starting to scream a little bit, is, I know exactly what happened to her, and I can't say so. I mentioned earlier about the subtle disparaging of the victim, but consider the context. She's missing, and she's missing for 6 days now. Who is she? Katelyn is missing for 6 days now. She's my fiance. I miss her. I once spoke to a man who took in his mother-in-law as an elderly woman who lived a very long life, and she needed a lot of care. And he was busy with his own family, but he really cared for his elderly mother-in-law. And each night, when he was finally able to sit down and watch the news and maybe have a cup of coffee, his mother-in-law would be in the floor above him in a rocking chair going, creak, 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 creak. Used to drive him out of his mind. The day of the funeral, he said, I miss that creak so much. When someone is missing, where she squeezed the toothpaste from the wrong side, I'd take it back 1,000,000 times just to have her back. That's the emotion that loved ones have. They don't complain. She was busy, I had to do everything for her. This is why we listen for that subtle justification of the death. He introduced the cell phone, he introduced the text messages. The interviewer, and the interviewer did seem to have an understanding of what was going on, but uses too many words, too many compound questions, too many leading questions. He said, it's kind of strange that Katelyn would leave without her keys, right? Did she leave her cell phone as well? He wasn't listening. Or he was trying to trick him. Yeah. So what is he saying? Yeah, that it's strange, or that did she leave her cell phone? That's the problem with the compound question, is that we don't know actually what he's answering when he says yes or yeah. Then he said, she had her cell phone on her apparently. Apparently means to give the appearance of. Why would we think that it gives the appearance of her if she was texting him? To this day, I still call it, just hoping that maybe she'll answer at some point or something like that. Again, she, and not Katelyn. But the phrase this, to this day I still call, it's only been 6 days. That sounds like closure. That's way too soon to process a murder or a disappearance of a person at this point. The interviewer said, that's really unusual about this, John, that her keys, that's unusual, but the purse. John said, yeah. And then the interviewer spoke. He made a lengthy statement, which I have to read in order to understand what John Carter said, but he said, I don't know any woman who doesn't take their purse with them. When women go to the bathroom, when women are, wherever they are, they have their purse with them. On and on he goes. Remember, the purpose of an interview is to gain information. John Carter has the information, not we, the interviewers. So he just went on about the nature of women, and John Carter said, yeah, exactly. And the thing is, she had sent me a picture of her that her boss took of her from her internship. I mean, she had 2 jobs and her internship and went to school full time. So I mean, she was consistently busy, but that stress made her stronger. I mean, she loved the fact that she was being so strong, and she was proud of herself. I mean, there was no anger at all when it came to that high stress. What we notice is 2 very important things about what he just said about her, which sounds complimentary, is first of all, he didn't mention her name again. We have not heard him say Katelyn. This is extreme distancing, psychological distancing. But something much more telling here, and I'll read it again. I mean, she had 2 jobs and her internship. I mean, she loved the fact that she was being so strong, and she was proud of herself. And there was no anger. All those references are in the past tense, as if she's dead. It's how we speak of dead people. Given the close proximity of time, 6 days, unless police have told him that she's dead, there should not be this element in his language. He's signaling to us by his language, he knows she's dead. He's already moved on, in fact. But these past tense references, they're consistent. And it's not something where any of us think about. We don't say, should I reference someone who's still alive? Should I say my daughter is a happy person because she's still alive? Or should I say my daughter was a happy person because she's dead? We simply say someone is or someone was. In the cases of missing persons, depending on the close proximity of the relationship, the amount of time that has passed, and whatever police have revealed, we do not expect to hear past tense references from a loved one, not from a fiance, unless they know or have some form of knowledge that the person is dead, or believe the person is dead. Say the police have said, we found a lot of her blood. He might begin to process that and begin to, every so often, slip into the past tense. I interviewed Haley Dunn's father. And when she was missing, originally police were looking for a runaway. And I spoke to the Texas Rangers and I said, she's dead. And here's how I know. Here's what the mom just referenced her in the past tense. She's dead. As a matter of fact, mom is telling us she needs an alibi too. And as the case went forward, as months went by, the mother continued to appear on television and the Nancy Grace show and on radio against her lawyer's wishes. And the more she spoke, the more we saw that this was a homicide that took place in the home, that had elements of narcotics, drug abuse, bestiality, child pornography. This was a disaster. And the father and I had spoken before, but in this case, at one point he referenced her in the past tense and he caught himself. He said, I guess I really am starting to accept my little girl's not coming home. And this was months after lots of information of drugs and violence and everything else in the case. But it was still hard for him to do that months later. 6 days have gone by, and he's speaking to her, revealing to us that she's deceased. He either knows or believes that she is deceased by his language. It only takes one slip. Susan Smith, her two sons were missing, and there were roadblocks set up, and she had blamed it on a black male. Interesting enough. And so they had roadblocks set up, pulling over black men, looking for the two boys. And an analyst called and said, guys, those kids are dead, and the killer's on television right now crying crocodile tears. How do you know? She said, my boys needed me. Now that they're kidnapped or carjacked, they no longer need her? That one word told us she did it. She knows they're dead. Mothers, fathers, husbands, engagement. They've been together 6 years. That's her fiance. There should be a real tight and closeness. He's not going to accept that she's dead unless he gets real evidence or enough time goes by. So even a single slip into past tense tells me he either knows or believes that she's dead. His repetition of it, however, makes it very clear to me. So I have a guy who made a 911 call, who I flagged for deception. He's withholding information about what happened to Katelyn. And now 6 days later, his language is telling us that he knows she's dead. Which makes sense if you look back at the fact that the discouragement of, I can't find her anywhere, so don't bother looking, the implication. Well, he didn't show concern for her when she was missing because she didn't need his concern. The 911 call was about him because he's the one in need. He's the one that's on the line for this thing. But I'll let him continue to talk to us and guide us. So, many references to the past tense tells us a knowledge or belief that she is deceased. He has told us there was no anger at all when it came to high stress. introducing anger in the negative, saying there's no anger, when you might ask, why would you feel the need to tell us that? And he introduced the word deception in some form, and now he's introduced anger, along with a extreme distancing language by refusing to use her name. It's very rare that someone can go this far without using the name even just once, but continues. Lengthy statement by one of the interviewers, and then finally a question. You guys were planning to move out of state in the late fall, early winter this year and get married, right? Well, we weren't going to get married until way after we moved out. So this is the first time we see the word we between them, and it's about not being married. Interesting unity there. I mean, I wasn't rushing anything. I mean, neither one of us wanted to. The original plan was to actually leave in October, but then my brother was coming to town, so she and I suggested to just wait until after he came to town. So we decided to postpone till November, and she could have easily have said, I just don't want to go. And I would have been totally fine with that. There was no, we weren't forcing it, we weren't trying to do anything we couldn't handle. He's now introducing a whole lot of stress, a whole lot of unity about not being married. And then he said, so she and I suggested to just wait. Now, if you suggest something to this person either agrees or disagrees. He has them both suggesting at the same time. What he's telling us is a conflict there. So she and I suggested to just wait. So we decided to postpone it until after November. And then he tells us he didn't force this. He said, she could have easily have said, I just don't want to go. He's telling us of a fight they've had and disagreements they've had. She's missing 6 days now, and he's speaking of